Welcome to Never Rewrite. I'm Isaac Askew.
Dustin Ray.
And I'm Jeffrey Sherman. And today we're going to discuss how testing and release practices are a cultural problem and not a technical one. Dustin, this is one of your hot takes. Do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So this comes up in my practice quite frequently, but in different stages of the company. The culture actually impacts the technical decisions and technical strategy. I think
Mm-hmm.
more than a lot of non-technical founders or even non-technical managers may be aware of. So what does this look like in practice, right? So in one side of the spectrum, as we were kind of discussing before the podcast, there is the kind of move fast and break things kind of mentality that a business has, and that may
Mm-hmm.
be really good for that early stage startup. But there may be a point in the business where speed is not the ultimate goal, because you still want speed, but you may need to also keep the lights on or keep the customers that you have happy. Um,
Right. If you have no
so that's kind of
customers,
the
then
framing.
nobody cares if you break things.
Right. Yeah. If there's no customers, no one cares if we break things. Um, you know, with an asterisk, of course, because rework always is an issue too. It's a kind of another thing.
Yes.
So it's
It'll
just a matter
stop you
of
from going
what's your
fast.
right, what's your tolerance for rework, speed, and that's kind of how all of these things become a culture problem and not necessarily a technical problem.
Hmm. Okay. Can you give us an example? Because I'm thinking, honestly, what you just said makes me wonder: is move fast and break things even valid? Like you aren't actually moving fast. You're just it's like a video game where you run into the wall and you stop, and then you run into the wall and you stop. And you're like, I'm moving really fast for like a half second, and then I got to move off the wall,
Right.
and you're not actually moving. You have the illusion of moving fast, but you just are
Sure.
hitting the wall.
Sure. So let's take. So we're talking at like a principle level. Let's kind of bring it
Mm-hmm.
into like what's the practice look like. So what I see with a lot of, especially, and I mean early stage startups, and they may even be bootstrapping, or they may even have small like friends and family investments, or bank round like a bank loan or something like that. So they have some seed capital to work with, but they can't necessarily go out and hire a full service like team. Like they can't
Hmm.
hire a full stack senior front end engineer, full stack senior back end engineer, a DevOps guy, a PM. Like they can't kind of put all that together. But that doesn't mean that their idea or product isn't worth pursuing, and there are other ways to get there. So kind of the way that I see that in practice is move fast and break things may be one of the only methods you have available to you in that early stage. And that may be enough to get that's why I always say stay really focused on that kind of core one problem at a time. Because in
Right.
that early stage, if you're
MVPs.
right, if you're moving fast, then you're just trying to get to that initial kind of customer problem set. So that move fast and break things makes sense there. But moving past that, once you have, I kind of call it like it's a financial tipping point where you have enough income coming in from the customers to sustain at least the
Mm-hmm.
operations of the business, not
Yeah.
necessarily fund growth, but you now have like a baby. It's alive. It's there, and so you kind of want to treat it as such. You don't move fast and break things with a baby, right? Like you want to be very careful with what you do and be very
Yes.
methodical and think about how you're taking care of it and what you're giving it. So I kind of use that
Babies do not
analogy.
like it when you shake things up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I think of an early stage MVP that's quote unquote done. It's in the market. It has some traction and is generating revenue. That's now a newborn business. It's a full cycle. And so you just may not have the resources that you would have, say, 2 3 years down the road as that continues to grow. Now you can start to have your internal team, and you can really kind of shape the practices that way. You now have more optionality in how you
Hmm.
approach your delivery practices. And I think that the point of today's talk is really to walk that founder through that, where they have that newborn baby sitting there, and what worked to get here is like maybe not the best way to get to the next stage.
Okay, so how do you convince a founder and they're like, look, I did all this crazy stuff and I moved fast and I broke things and I, beat up my developers or got my developers to work 36 hours straight, even though it
Right.
produced crap code and you should never do that. But I got it there and now I have people paying me money, so I should double down and people should work 72 hours straight or
Right.
what is it,
Right.
the 996
Right.
nonsense.
Yeah.
Uh, how do you convince them that no, now you actually have something that's fragile, that is breakable?
Hmm.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. I wish I knew the answer to how to convince them before they're having the pain. But
Hmm.
usually there's a signal that tells them that this isn't working. So what I've seen founders do is incentivize like speed. So say, for example, the more bugs that you take down in a sprint, the more bonus you'll receive. And I know there's a couple famous cartoons
Yeah, I
about
was just
the
thinking about the
issue here.
Dilbert cartoon.
Yeah, I'm gonna write
Where he's like,
myself
I'm
a
going to
new
go
van.
program up a van.
Right. Yeah. So it doesn't exactly it doesn't exactly work as obvious as you might think it is from the non-technical side, especially because that kind of incentive works in other fields very effectively. So it's very easy to think, well, that could work here, but there's kind of other things at play. So usually, what you'll see is if you're in that newborn baby phase and you're not making progress towards the toddler phase, and you're
Hmm.
like stuck, right? So the feeling will be all we do is fix bugs. That's a
Hmm.
signal. Something
Hmm.
is probably needing to shift in your culture. The belief shift in your culture is what will create the actions on your technical team to fix the issue, right?
So unless you believe that you need to invest heavily in testing, testing will never save you.
Correct. Because if no one believes that that's the priority, then they're just doing what they believe the business wants them to do. Like, everyone is always acting in their best interest. Like they're never trying to be
Mm.
the bad guy or to do wrong. Everyone thinks that they're doing the right thing. Um,
And interestingly too, like they were also hired in a different context. So you
Hmm.
were hired in the early stages, and you were praised for delivering fast,
right.
coding very quickly, getting things out, and that was just a phase you're very good at. When you do have to change, if the founder doesn't notice to give that signal to developers, they're going to continue on doing the same things. And
Right.
again, if you're prioritizing and praising people for going fast, they're probably not writing tests. Um, and so if you need them to suddenly start writing tests and they weren't hired in that context and they've been doing 3 years of development, moving fast and not worrying about that protection layer of tests, then they're not going to change things unless they're told to. And if the CEO or the founder or whatever doesn't know to tell them to, or know that, oh, we're shifting now to this phase and I need to
Hmm.
know that way you need to context swap and you should stop programming the way you were. And now we're gonna swap how we're programming to be more protective. Then that's just not going to change by itself. They need to know that too.
Right. And I would even argue that the team inherently is not going to shift as quickly as the manager or the founder is. Like the manager or the
Hmm.
founder is likely used to rapid shifts in priority and moving things and turning on a dime. Whereas the team may be used to that in a relative sense if they're used to working in startups, but the entire team culture is still not going to switch overnight. So it's important to have that
Hmm.
kind of redundancy
Hmm.
to continue talking about the shift and like here's the roadmap that we are on, not the product roadmap, but as a company, like where are we going? Where are we trying to get to and how do we operate in each of these phases, and that kind of helps set the framing, I think, for how the teams operate day to day and what that means. I think it's also important for the leader to have at least some sense of what good looks like and what isn't good. Like maybe that's a metric of some sort. One I like to use is like maybe mean time to recover, or it could be how often you release is another one. But just having kind of one of these kind of North Star technical metrics that everybody's trying to improve. So at least there's the culture of continuous improvement kind of built in. The other thing I wanted to just really quickly call out is there is a
Hmm.
difference in this newborn phase where we also want to probably start to separate the testing and release process, right? So there may be a feature acceptance process that says, hey, this feature in isolation is tested and accepted, but we're now going to have this new layer in between that and the actual release where all of our feature tests come together and we're going to test the entire thing end to end before we release. That's one thing I've seen almost every newborn stage business utilize to keep quality high while the process of getting those automated tests put in place happens. I don't know if that's been your experience.
Yes, it's an interesting thing. Of I have found that when companies get serious about quality, they tend to do fewer releases,
Mhm.
even though any developer who's read or developers who have read the literature will say the way to get higher quality releases is to do more releases, right? Like continuous deployment is generally safer than feature gathering features up for a week and then doing a weekly release, which is still safer than doing a monthly release or a quarterly release, or the quarterly releases is the worst I've seen. But it's an interesting. It goes against what people instinctively think, and I
Mm-hmm.
find people are like, "Oh, we need to go quality," and so they say fewer releases, and the answer is actually quality comes from more releases.
Yeah, I think what I'm saying is actually aligned with that. And here's the nuance that I would add that I wrote down. So it's
Hmm.
not that I think that we want to slow down releases by adding this additional, bureaucracy layer or what have you. But the idea is that by slowing it down, we now can do slow as smooth, smooth as fast. So if we can
Hmm.
do the whole process at the quality bar that we want slowly, now it's just a matter of how do we speed up that process, as opposed to we're doing our quality process really fast, but maybe we're not getting out of it. We don't even know, for example, like what we're getting out of it. We're just doing quality, right? So then it's like, well, we're tracking some arbitrary quality metric, like maybe how often do we have an incident or something like that, as opposed to, we have this process that's consistently improving and is systematic. That's my
That
take.
yes, I'm with you now. The idea that okay, yes, you if it takes a week to do the quality release, then it takes a week to do the quality release, and then you're
Right.
trying to automate it until you get to the point where it's more or less continuous delivery. I have almost never seen a company actually manage to do continuous improvement on the quality process.
Hmm.
If anything, it usually backslides
Yeah.
because usually something gets through, and instead of saying, "Oh, we need to improve," they come up with more rules.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
I've seen that a lot actually, and fairly recently. Um, I think it's the knee jerk reaction of, okay, now we've got something. Guess this thing's going to make some money now, and we need to protect
Mm-hmm.
it. Then you finally have your first major incident, inevitably,
Yes.
after this happens. And instead of going, oh well, what are the reasons this happened? That can we figure out how to make this not happen again and put some things in place that were missed? There becomes the bureaucracy layer of like, oh, well, we need to have, you know, we need to install AI alarms, plug and
Right.
play. They'll
Yeah.
analyze the code, make sure this doesn't happen. We need to have two approvals. We
Yep.
need to have EM sign off on the release, and they just completely hamstring the release process and the development process because of that paranoia.
Hmm.
There's this nice line in between of um, basically just being entirely scared that you'll do any more damage, and just being wide open to, I like the way the Wild West way before, where we could just do anything.
Yeah.
Every company has to find this nice line where you can still move fast, but you have to understand that there's going to be a bug at some point, and you have to be okay with
Mm-hmm.
that. And instead of going like we have to prevent anything from ever happening, it's, well, we'll try our best to prevent things from ever happening, but also we should have the ability to recover quickly when it inevitably does happen. How can we pivot or move very quickly on top of this, release a hot fix, revert it, whatever we need to do to understand that it failed, and fix it very quickly.
Yeah. The We had an incident, so we're going to have managers be responsible for approving releases. Is sort of the most common go-to thing that I've seen,
Hmm.
and it's entirely wrong every time because managers aren't didn't write the code and they can't possibly review all the code. So all managers are like all you are doing is assigning blame. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're creating a system to assign blame, and you aren't spending that time doing monitoring or building better testing. Like it's anytime you're like, oh well, we need more checks before in the release process, you are destroy like the, teams do well if it's a blameless culture, if there's not
Right.
fear, and if you have managers doing signing off, that is absolutely a blame thing of well, the manager signed off. You shouldn't have signed off. What you manager? What
And
did you do?
they put that same
They
fear
put
back
the,
into the team
they
too,
put it on the
because
team, right? No, no,
and
it's
the
that
engineers
like that's
feel
the
it for sure.
purpose. Yeah,
Yeah. Right. And again, and they release slower, and they're more scared, and they're like again,
and because you
it's
release
just it'll
slower, you
backfire on
release
you.
larger, which
Hmm. Which is
is
riskier,
always worse. Yeah, always
and it
riskier.
ends up causing more bugs. Yeah.
All right,
So
so
how do you
Dustin.
convince leadership to take kind of another approach there?
Hmm. Well, I think
Like, how do you mitigate the risk? Because that's essentially what they're trying to do, right?
yeah, they're over committing to this wrong approach to
Mm-hmm.
mitigating risk. I think having a healthy post mortem is really good, and rather than
Yes,
like just showing, oh, I'm the leader and this is what we're going to do now because I can say so. That is the wrong approach. Instead, let's just like lay out what actually happened and if there are other tools that we could have implemented to do that, and then start there. But like I think the main thing a leader should do is understand that software is going to have bugs and software is going to go down at some point.
yes,
How are you going to handle that? Are you going to attack your team and make things not fun?
Right.
And fun is a bad word here because it's still a business. You still want it to succeed and you still want it to make money. But if you end up being too much of a hard ass because of the response there, then you're going to lose good engineers because you're going to create a culture of like this
fear.
fear and oppression, right? So part of that is like needing to understand, okay, mistakes happen, but did they happen in a way that is actually not
Oh, I think I
really
just lost
professional for the stage that we're
everyone.
at? In that case, you need to kind of change um, your approach or understand that you're in that going towards the toddler stage. And then communicating that, I think, would be next, like communicating that to the team and saying, hey, okay, we had a big incident and it made me reflect now that before that was acceptable because we're moving fast and breaking things. Now we're at this culture pivot point. Um, everybody, and now we're going to start doing this. Well, first of all, we're going to figure out why this thing happened. We're going to put things in place, but now we're going to kind of find a way to pivot towards quality and communicate that with developers and say before we're doing this, now we're going to try to change for this particular next stage, and maybe in a way that's not super jarring. Just say, don't do the manager sign off thing or crazy thing, but go, okay, did you commit and run, which is
Right.
people do
Well,
that
that's
and
a
they commit and go on
checklist.
vacation, right? It's some things that are basic that are like, hey, we should care a little bit more about our code now, not just like another bug and you're fired, that
Right.
kind of
Right.
thing,
So I think that
but I
further
think mainly
proves the point.
communicating.
Yeah, it just further proves the point that I think testing and release practices are a cultural problem, and it's not necessarily just a technical problem in and of itself.
Awesome.
Yeah. So an interesting thing that kind of makes me like something that stands out from that comment too is like we've had issues recently where someone pushed code. It was a hot fix. It was on the weekend. Everybody's happy with it because it fixed one issue, but ended up not fixing the issue. Something was down for half a day, right? And so when you go, oh, this thing was down half a day. Why did our test not catch this? Why does this not catch
Right.
this? Blah 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 blah. And you're like, okay, well, did the engineer just sanity check that the thing that they pushed to was still working after they pushed on the weekend? Oh, they didn't. Okay, that's a culture problem too, right?
Yeah.
You don't. I mean, there's some things that to me, I think are obvious. Like, oh, if I push to a repo, I should check and see that. I
The
know it
build
might be
passed.
strange and unrelated to my code. Can I just log into the dashboard or give it a quick spot check to make sure? Okay, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
cool. It's still deployed correctly because deploys can fail all the time even if your code's fine. you
Right.
know, that's to me obvious. It's not obvious to everyone because some people will just code it, and go, oh yeah, it's just a quick one liner. I just changed the text to say
Right.
the copy for a product manager. It'll be live. Oh no, the deploy failed and something goofed and now the site's down because deploys can fail, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's also one of those culture change things where it's like the processes were fine. You did everything right. I'm sure you got approvals from the PR, blah blah blah, sign off, but something still needs to change there to make sure
Right.
do we own our code? Do we have a little more responsibility or a little bit more pride about how we deliver this, and ensure that we still have our uptime and our customers are still happy?
Exactly.
Awesome.
And it all leads into my further kind of bigger principle that non-technical founders and non-technical managers have more impact on the technical culture than they realize. So just because you're not
huge
technical
amounts.
doesn't mean you don't have impact. Yeah.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you all for listening. I'm Jeffrey Sherman.
Dustin Ray.
And I'm Isaac Askew, and this is Never Rewrite.